Okay. Hey, everybody. It's Tanya Hart, American Urban Radio Networks and online. So glad you could join us today. Yes, I have my glasses on because y'all know I need them to see. I tried to take them off to be cute. But anyway, we got quite a lineup here today. We are continuing our Black Music Month conversation, which we started back in June with our friend here, Vincent Wilburn Jr. So he really helped us set all of this up today. Here, thank you so much, Vince.
Thank you.
Vince, of course, is the nephew of the late, great, inimitable Miles Davis. And one of the things we're doing here today is celebrating the 50th anniversary of one of Miles' greatest LPs. That, of course, was Bitches Brew. And I want everybody to see, before we start this conversation, you have to see this. This is the Bitches Brew hoodie.
Oh, nice. Can you get that online? You can get that at milesdavis.com, right?
Yes, you can. That's why I wanted to show it, because
a shameless plug.
A shameless. No, but that's what this is all about. Everybody can plug their stuff here today. Lenny White, man, Lenny, you are legendary. You know what? It's nice to be a legend in your own time and not just in your own mind. And that's what Lenny is. Great drummer. You know, you played with everybody, but of course, it was the group that set everybody up. And I'm gonna put my glasses on because y'all know I can't really see what I'm talking about here. Okay, and you also played on Bitches Brew, which
yes.
I just didn't even realize until I was looking up some stuff. I'm like, oh, he was on this album. And even though that was 50 years ago, you know what? You still look the same. That's the good news.
I just don't have any hair, that's all.
Oh, that's okay. Everybody shaves their head. Of course, and with Chick Corea and a whole bunch of other people for many, many, many years. And also Emilio. Emilio and Malick, you guys are the younger generation of all of this. But you have been around. Emilio, you're a child prodigy since 8 years old. You've been playing with many of the greats. Quite amazing. Of course, everybody was so sad to lose the late, great Wallace Roney, who passed away from COVID just about 3 or 4 months ago. Malick, you were also playing many years with Wallace. And so we just wanted to celebrate him. We've got Wes Smith with us, who has done a lot of stuff, I know here in LA, but all over the country. Played with Booker T. Jones for many years. I think you're still playing with Booker, although nobody's really kind of out there now these days. Worked with Jennifer Lopez, Pharrell Williams, Robin Thicke, and and you're a composer as well.
And also a good amount of original music. It's fun.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that's what we want to get into here today. I do want to, first of all, thank everybody for joining us. Our condolences definitely to Emilio and Malick for the loss of Wallace Roney. I got to ask you, when I'm looking at all of you and it's like, okay, there's the one real connection to here is Miles Davis, because Lenny, you kind of started out playing with Miles.
Yes.
And yeah, and then we moved, and Wallace was actually a Miles Davis protege. And
well, Wallace is one of the only trumpet players that played with Miles Davis.
Yeah, exactly. Can you just tell us what those days were like, Lenny?
Well, playing with Wallace or playing with Miles?
Well, actually playing with Miles and Wallace, since you did both.
Well, for me, that was the first time I was on a real recording. And so for me, it was like baptism by fire, I walked into a studio and saw people that I had seen before play and looked at their names, and they were on records that I had in my house. So me being a part of that was really very, very special for me. And I learned a lot of lessons, and it actually shaped my perspective on making music, because I made music before I played music.
Interesting. Now, I got to ask, so Vince and Leonard, did you guys know each other you did, because I know you played together. You played recently, but I'm just in those days. Did you know each other?
Me, Lenny, and I.
Uh-huh.
Tanya, Lenny and I are brothers.
I understand, but I'm just saying.
No, we've played together on a couple of projects. We're doing a project now called my band, the Miles Electric Band, and Lenny and I are co-producing that. And Emilio played on that record. It's not out yet. It's going to come out on Sony Legacy. But we do have a tune on the soundtrack, Birth of the Coup, the documentary soundtrack, called "Hail to the Real Chief," composed by Lenny White.
Okay, yeah, because I know that you both played obviously with Miles. You've both been on the road with him, but I didn't know if those days.
I didn't go on the road with him. I mean, unfortunately for me, I mean, I did some records, and then when I was supposed to go on the road with him, that's when he got shot.
We talked about that. Vince talked about that when we were talking about the whole Black Lives Matter thing and the police. So interesting. Let's bring the other guys in. What do you guys remember, or what do you know? Because obviously, you're a bit younger. When you first heard about Miles Davis, how old were you, Emilio?
I was, I don't know if I could put a number to it, but I grew up listening to Miles Davis. Miles Davis was a part of my household. Tell
people your story, because you've been playing really with professional people since you were 8 years old, I believe, or maybe before then.
I started playing professionally around when I was 14 years old, and I began playing the violin when I was 3 years old, and then switched to the drums, and then to the piano, and then finally wanted to play the tenor saxophone. It's too small, so that I couldn't play. I had to play the alto saxophone, and that was when I was about 8 years old.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and the rest is history, as they say. I mean, on the road with all of these people. Malick, you had an interesting background because you were born in Abidjan, I believe. Was it Abidjan?
Yeah.
And so you had the benefit of having that Afro beat, Afro music sound. But what got you into jazz?
My father, when I was really young, well, my father was a playwright, and he grew up in France. He was one of what they would call the colonization babies. And so when he was born in Guinea, his parents sent him to France so that he would be spared from all the, commotion that would kind of take over Guinea. And so he grew up in France, and once he finished, he moved back to West Africa and later met my mother and then had me. But from his, traveling and works in theater, he, found a passion in music, because a lot of the pieces that he was working on and a lot of the works that he was reviving is this kind of theater in West Africa that is called Koteba, which is a form of theater that I guess has an emphasis on folklore and music also, as well as acting. And so I grew up in a musical household, and my mother is a singer as well in her own right. And so when I was growing up, my father used to travel and used to leave records that I needed to learn. It would always be like, but this was sort of with everything, he'd leave an encyclopedia, deal with geography and a bunch of things, but music was a thing in our home. And so he'd leave me these records and be like, learn them. And when I come back, you can sing me, the songs and whatnot. And there's this particular record that he left that I fell in love with. And there's this one song that I just obsessed over. And that was my introduction to Giant Steps. And I was like, I think I was maybe 8 or 9, something like that. But that was the first time that I heard those sounds. And then later on, I later moved here in the US, and funny enough, I moved into the building where Antoine Roney, Wallace's brother, lived in.
Wow.
And yeah, and I grew towards other things, sports and whatnot. And I used to play video games. And again, in the video game that I used to play, I fell in love with this song that I remembered from my childhood, which was Giant Steps. And so when I used to hang out with Antoine and I used to sing the song, you'll be like, where do you know this from? And that's kind of how, you know, in a weird way, yeah, you know, I've been always attached to it and whatnot.
Wow. Well, you know, there are no coincidences in life. That's where you were supposed to be. And of course, you were touring with Wallace as well. And both of you guys, you and Emilio, were touring right up to the very end almost. Let's talk to Wes, though, for just a second, because Wes, you've got an interesting background. And what was your introduction to jazz?
You know, Tanya, my intro to jazz was my grandmother. She gave me Lester Young and Count Basie live. 1955, like that. They sound unbelievable, and the music is smart and warm, and man, just stuff you could listen to all day, you know.
Yeah.
That was really for me. I barely played saxophone. Emilio, I checked you out last night, man. I was checking out some recordings, man. It sound beautiful, dude. You know, just to try and figure out how to emulate this music that, you know, it's not really about selling a bottle of vodka in a club on a Saturday night somewhere. It's a little higher up, you know, and so that's my story, plain and simple.
Well, you know, it's very interesting that you'd say that, because one of the things about jazz, the music itself, is that it's always had sort of a higher calling, and many people would put it in, you know, I mean, the blues, you know, there was blues and all of that, but jazz was always the intellectual music. Do you think that's really true, or did it just happen to be that way because of the people that played the music?
Yeah, I would defer to the fellas that have been here longer than I have, for sure.
Lenny?
Well, you know, that music that was created by the people that I held dear, and is still created by people that I hold dear. It's not a style of music for me. It's my heritage. It's a little bit different because it transforms and goes through many different styles, but it is a heritage, and I learned it from people who created it. So for me, it's a little bit different. I know around the world it's played in many different countries and everything, but I celebrate it as a heritage. So for me, it has a little different meaning for me. And I got an opportunity to play with some of my heroes, so that even made it even more special to do that.
What about women in jazz? You know, we always think of, and all the people we're talking about happen to be men, and that's fine, because we like men. But what about the women in jazz? Where do you see them, and especially today? Emilio and Malick, you know, do you see any other, you know, we've got Esperanza Spalding coming up, and of course my very, very dear friend out of Boston. But what would you guys say about women in jazz today?
I think that we need to hear what people are thinking and how people are feeling. And I think that if we're going to, you know, everyone needs to express themselves, and not only express themselves, but, you know, take this expression and build the kind of world that we think that we should be a part of, you know, be active participants, be residents of, you know. So I think the only way we can get to that is we have everybody's, you know, music as building blocks for that world.
Which includes
male and female.
right.
Yeah.
It includes everyone.
Yeah.
But you know, it's interesting because when we start talking about teaching, Wes, which I know you do, you have students. Do you have as many female students, Wes, as you do male?
You know, I have 3 female students, and then the rest are male. That's right.
Yeah. So it's not something that women really have been sort of pushed into, really. I mean, you know, you can be,
well, you know, Tanya, it doesn't discriminate. You know,
no,
as long as anybody can play and it's true to the music. You know, I've shared the stage with great female musicians,
Yeah, 100%.
but you know, I don't look at them like, oh, she's female. As long as they can play the music, you know, and they're true to the music. Lenny, if I may say, teaches at NYU, and he had me, you know, sit in on a couple of his classes, and it's you know it's all races, male, female. You know, we don't look when I'm sure I can and speak for the guys when we go to a gig, we don't say, oh, you got a female on the piano or you got a female on the bass. I mean, everybody is true to the music, and then it comes out. You know, Patrice Rushen, you know, she's like
Right, definitely. And I actually spoke with her yesterday.
Patrice.
oh, how's she doing? I love her.
She's
I love
doing
great.
fantastic.
Yeah, she's
Well,
great.
you know, Terry Lynn Carrington, who I was talking about, my friend from Boston, is a drummer. And she was certainly ahead of her time, you know, as a drummer. And I'm sure that you guys can appreciate that, the drummers here on the set. But she didn't always have an easy time at it.
Yeah, but
Oh.
I didn't either, Tanya. See,
Okay.
here's what Vince was saying is true. I don't think it discriminates. And like, you know, you said something that was interesting. You said women don't get pushed into jazz. None of us got pushed into this at all. I mean, the fact is we liked music, whatever kind of music we started to hear. Whatever came out through a jazz lens, because we listened to all different kinds of musics.
Yeah.
And then it's filtered through how we view our music, which is now considered jazz or whatever you want to call it. But I played with fantastic female musicians. And again, like Vince said, I don't discriminate at all. I've had female musicians in the groups that I've been involved with, and it's fantastic. I mean, and they have a great deal to offer. And that's the reason why you have anybody in your band, because they got something to offer. And if they don't have anything to offer, then they don't need to. You don't need them in your band. You know.
Anyway, I know that's.
I also wanted to add to that in the sense that I don't want to discount, you know, the experience that maybe the woman experienced, in the sense that there is discrimination everywhere inherently, you know, rather than a focused lens of like, oh, we don't want women here or what and whatnot. But to reiterate what Lenny said, this music demands, there's a requirement, you know, that is demanded of us. And ultimately, it you know, over the years, you know, Lenny can tell me if I'm wrong, the level has shifted towards different places, and it is quite hard, even for us, in a sense, to you know, like for me to get into Wallace Roney's band, I could tell you endless stories as to how I got there, but it was not easy. But to know that somebody like Cindy Blackman played in that band as one of the earliest drummers. And Cindy Blackman is no joke. She's one of the best drummers in the world.
Sure is.
And so ultimately, when the level shifted with all of us, there's a narrative that is written with the inherent discrimination, you know, and I guess, you know, but I would say that, you know, Miss Terry Lynn and Cindy Blackman Santana have definitely endured things, you know, in the times that they played in, because, you know, some people may have thought they couldn't do something because they were women, but they proved everybody wrong. And I guess there's this staple in this music that is, you know, not necessarily shaped on who you are. I mean, I'm an African playing jazz music. You know, I could have very much been told, listen, this is not yours, but, you know, this is a democracy, and a lot of people come here and do what they do in respect to the music, and you know, and that separates everything wherever you come from, you know, to vary.
But Malick, but it is from Africa.
Right? No, indeed.
You know what I mean? It is. All this is from Africa.
Indeed.
History?
Indeed.
Not to
Well,
cut you off.
No, that's okay. Were you finished, Malick?
No, yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
you're making a good point. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, speaking about that, um, coming from Africa, but also jazz has also been kind of a political statement. So much so that many of our early jazz musicians, exiled to Europe and other places because they didn't have to face a lot of the stuff that was going on here. And is that still the same? Is that changing? I mean, I know we're all talking about Black Lives Matter because they do. Is jazz still in that political arena in your mind, or was it ever?
Oh, anybody want to start out and talk about it?
I just want to say the reason that I think my uncle favored France and musicians of that era was because the music in Europe, in France, was accepted and reared maybe more than in the States. A political statement, I don't know. All music, hip hop is political statements.
Oh, it certainly is.
Yeah, all music has political statements. But I think from conversations with Uncle Miles, he said that once he didn't feel the racial tension and the separation of races when he first visited France. That's why he didn't want to come back to the States. But he did. Because he had a family, and he was based in New York.
Right.
Tanya, music is a powerful form. It's probably one of the most, if not the most powerful form that you have going on today. And so what happens is that with a vehicle that powerful and you make statements, whether they're political or whatever, it becomes a situation where, like they say, well, that music is political. That's only when you make a statement. And what an artist does, an artist makes creations that are reflections of what he or she sees in society.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about that's with hip hop, they put words to it. Even before hip hop, when Marvin Gaye was talking about, well, not before, but when he's talking about what's going on, those were like expressions of what was happening at the time, and he channeled it through his music.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, jazz being a political statement, yes, it has been because it was made by Black people and they were making statements. And so those statements were aligned as being political. When Max Roach says, "We insist," when he was writing music about things that were happening because they were not letting people of his color sit in restaurants. Well, now you can't sit in a restaurant at all
Right.
anyway because of COVID. But
Right.
but the situation is, artists used the musical platform to say things because with music you can reach a great number of people.
And you know what, Lenny? They lived it. They lived it, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, and I'm hoping that reflective of what used to happen, I'm hoping that maybe there's some musics that are going to come out from this situation right now that will be representative of what's going on, and that might help change people's perspectives. So yeah.
Well, go ahead.
No, so yes, music is political, and because jazz music is made by Black people and they say certain things with their music, they become political statements.
Well, so how do you make and I'm talking really about today because that's what we're dealing with, and Emilio and Wes and Malick, you guys, you're kind of the younger generation of this. Looking at where we are right now, other than being in lockdown, and the fact that you all can't be out there doing really what you do generally all the time, in the way that you've been doing it all the time, how do we now connect with the people that are out there protesting in the street. I don't know if you saw the news this morning, but folks are like in the streets in cities all across America. Folks got killed over the weekend out protesting. Of course, we've got a crazy anarchist government, but that being aside, how do we connect now with all the folks out there, and especially the younger folks that really want to do something and want to be a part of something? How can we make this music connect? And Wes, I'm going to ask you.
I think that to have at least this, and this is my experience as an educator. I think young kids, primarily from 6 to K-12, so not young kids. Most of them in high school. But the interesting thing for me is high school kids versus literally the 6th grade kids. I don't ever, and I hope this doesn't get too boring and technical, but I don't put any method books to actually teach saxophone or piano. I don't do stuff like that. I present them with things like Charlie Parker's Al Proval or Miles Davis and Train and Cannonball pulling on So What. And the interesting thing about today is that if something's too fast or too challenging for them, you just send them to YouTube and you have them play it on half speed. And I think there's a are very interested in this music, in American jazz. And I know COVID sucks. Use a different word, but I know this is going to be broadcast. But I think there's a lot of hope and optimism with the young people and open to really challenging things like music, especially jazz. That's an optimistic thing.
Emilio, did you go out and have you seen any of the protests, or have you participated in any of the protests?
I have not been outside much.
Hopefully that's a good thing.
But we do have to, find our ways of contributing to what is going on. So, I may not be in the streets, but, a way that I believe speaks for me is through music and through a certain way. Of course, there's music in the streets as well, but there's a sound that comes from these kinds of things. And if we figure out what it is for ourselves and we can contribute that music, give it to everyone else, then hopefully that's the right way, at least for me. That takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of searching. But we, your mother makes something for you, and she knows exactly, she's been with you, we've been in this world for however long, and you'd go to your mother's and she would make something, you go to your aunt's house and she would make something, already knowing exactly how you like it, so we have to do that kind of thing, speaking from our family, speaking from our community, and make some, food that they need. It's not that different.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a very good perspective and a really good analogy of what we're talking about, because I agree with you. There is a sound now that, coming out of the streets that a lot of people have captured it. I mean, you see people coming out with a new song every day about this, but this music, the music that you guys are involved in, the music that you play, is so indigenous to this country that I am so sure that the sounds that we are hearing in the streets are going to be, it's almost like we've heard it before. You listen to Bitches Brew, again, it almost sounds like what's going on today. If you listen to some of the sounds in that.
Well,
Lenny,
Tanya, It's a very interesting point because yeah, the music was made by Black Americans, but right now it's celebrated outside of America more so than America itself, and that's because you know how trends and tastes change. Like Emilio was saying, okay, so the home cooked meal is jazz, but the fact of the matter is now because people's tastes have changed, maybe they don't like that anymore and they like something new. And you have to find a way to take an old recipe and make it work for people's tastes today. But the problem and the obstacle that's in front of us is that the new flavor is much more promoted as opposed to having home cooked food. And so we have to try to find ways to maybe water it down or do this to it. And I don't think we really want to do that. So we have to compete with the people that are selling these new ways. That's my phone. Sorry about
Okay,
that.
I was gonna say, is that my phone again?
You know,
Sorry about that. That's what happens on Zoom. It's okay.
I know. Yeah, it's what can I tell you? But the situation is that you know we have this home cooked food that we've tasted and loved for all these years. All the time that I've been eating food, I've been eating food that has this home cooked flavor. But I've gone around the world and tasted all these different flavors and tasted the new flavors here from the United States too. But then again, still, I put my same seasoning that my parents gave me, you know, and because I like that seasoning. And so this is the issue that we have to do. We have to try to find a vehicle or find a couple of restaurants that put our food out there so that everybody can have it. And everybody can say, well, I've never tasted this before. Well, this is really good, you know. That's what we have to deal with right now, you know, because hip hop and all these other kinds of musics, which are great, this is how music has evolved, but we have to fight our way through that. And how do we get it? We have to educate our young students about this music and get them to say, oh, wow, yeah, I can. So we have to be a bridge from where it is from my generation to the new generation. And these two guys right here, Malick and Emilio, they've lived in both worlds. So it's up to them and how we can get that across. And we have to leave it up to them.
So what is it that the U.S. is missing that other countries? No, I mean it's a. But no, I'm serious. What is it that we're really missing that other countries seem to have that they just have been able to
respect,
respect, and this love, and to honor this music. You know that we have to fight to get a record deal, have to fight to get a tour, have to fight to keep our jazz clubs open, have to fight. You know, it's an atrocity. You know.
Yeah. Well, you know, having grown up, you know, in other places, you know, than here and moving here, I think that's something that I've started to realize over this time is that a lot of the issues in this country are related to memory and how is it that we're offered information. Now, you know, it seems that the powers that be cling to some form of they cling to whatever upholds this identity. And if we want to talk about what is the identity of this country in the minds of the power that be, it is white culture. So anything that somewhat diverges from that message that comes from somewhere else, we try to negate or ostracize it in a sense. And it's no secret that the things that, you know, Charlie Parker endured, the things that John Coltrane endured are still happening today, you know, and to have our mentors and our, you know, our heroes die the way they do now in 2020, just like, you know, our heroes died in the 1960s. I attribute that to memory and the way that the powers that be have decided to dissipate information, because it is unacceptable that jazz today, when you go on the street and you talk about somebody like Duke Ellington or Count Basie, the people don't tie that into what it is, because if anything, you know, jazz music is the music of the United States. It is a staple. It is a staple of this society. And it is interesting that if you talk to any of the, you know, the people who are on top, who've lived long enough, that aren't necessarily Black or cling to those power dynamics, they'll love they'll try to attribute it to classical music. Classical music is European. It's not, you know, it doesn't have that same relationship, but it is easier to cling to that because yes, there is this thing that is attributed to that rather than jazz music.
Malik, see the situation, I agree with you 100%, but not even classical music is the United States music. What now the music of the United States is hip hop. That's right. That's what's influenced the whole world. It used to be jazz, but now hip hop is also an American, Black American innovation.
Right.
And so this is what I was trying to say with talking about home cooking is jazz, and then there's another home cooked meal that now has different flavors because the palate has moved and the younger people are into it. And so like now the situation is, this is what's being purported as American meal, the American meal. It's like there was great Southern cooking, now it's McDonald's. And McDonald's is easily fed around the world. And so that's what, and you gotta understand.
Hey, Lenny, and quick.
That's right. They don't have to worry about, oh man, that takes too long for me to eat that food. No, this is quick. You can get it. It's fast. And that's what it's become. It's like that with music, you know. Yeah. That doesn't stop us from continuing to experiment with what it is that we do. But it makes it hard for us to get our creations in front of people. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if there were anything that if we were capable of doing, is to at least be on the same platform as the music that is talked about and now loved all over the world, which is hip hop. And I'm not taking anything away from hip hop, but the word hip comes from jazz. Mm-hmm. That's the first time you ever heard that word.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, now it's hip hop is not even hip hop. Now it's trap music. It's a whole lot of different things that, you know. And see, I don't want to sound like I'm against music evolving and doing different things and having different textures and names or whatever. That's not the case. I would just like for it to be a situation where all music was listened to and given the same amount of respect. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the difference. The difference is that the aesthetic has changed. The reason why people make music is different than my generation and why we made music.
Yeah. Agreed.
when John Coltrane made A Love Supreme, he made a declaration to everyone that this was his homage to God. You can come along with me and do this and listen that way. If you don't want to, that's okay. But the soul that he put into that message is what drew all of us.
And interestingly enough, A Love Supreme's got a great melody. You can remember it and almost dance to it.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
You know, you were going to say something, another thought?
Huh?
I thought Vince had another thought.
No, I was just in agreement with what Lenny said, you know, and Tanya, we're on a Zoom call every Friday with Lenny. It's called Lennys Loft, and Malick and Emilio and all these young cats come on, and we listen and we share. You know what I mean? We share what we know, and we it's a give and take. Mm-hmm. And then they share, and it's so beautiful because there's a, you know, I don't want to say the next in line, it's, you know, young lions or nothing. I used to call Lenny in the middle of the day.
He still does.
He still does. I'm gonna tell you why. Because Lenny, for me, is the barometer. Lenny's honest. When I tried to pick somebody to produce the record, it had to be Lenny White. Either he evolves, Emilio evolves, Malick evolves. So it's gotta be a paradigm shift. You know, we gotta keep fighting, because we're fighting. We're fighting to get budget, fighting to get the music played, fighting to get a section on the Grammy Awards. You know, they don't. How come we don't have a feature in the Grammy Awards? We don't even have a category in Billboard anymore. I don't even see jazz. You know. But I'm not. I'm like I said, I'm not angry. But I'm not the jilted drummer jazz guy. You know, because Miles does well, and in our own right, we're doing okay. But we can always strive, and if somebody's listening, to give us, you know, give it more. You know, back in the, you know, when we were coming up back in the day, it was cool to play jazz. It was the lines to a jazz club were wrapped around the block. You know,
right? No, that's true.
Concerts, you know, it was that was the time.
See, Tanya,
we got to get back. We got to get back to that.
Well, I was going to say what you both said about it be about hip hop. You know, because I feel I've been very lucky. I've crossed a couple of generations here. So, I mean, I was very involved with a lot of the famous hip hop people today, and I really like hip hop, you know, some of it. Love jazz, I mean, I like music. I was a singer. I sang with a lot of great people. But all of that being said, what you said about jazz, though, is like jazz was the hip, cool thing.
It still is.
Still is.
It still is.
Yeah.
The thing, what has to happen, Tanya, is that if I want my music, and when I say my music, I'm talking about the music of my heroes, Miles, Train, Jimi Hendrix, a whole bunch of people, James Brown. If I want that to survive, I have to instill that in the people that I teach. And the fact is that's why we have these conversations every week, is because Emilio and Malick are the newer generation, but they also have the same sensibilities that my generation has.
Exactly.
Again, you have to listen to all kinds of musics to shape what 21st century music is. And you have to have listened to 19th, 20th century music also to get a good perspective to create what would be 21st century music. There's the problem is that people who live in the 21st century think that they're going to just create 21st century music. And that's not a good perspective of doing that. It could be that you will do that, but I think that you need to experience all generations all different centuries of musics and put them together and view them through a 21st century perspective.
See, let me just be there. So what goes into composing a good jazz song? What goes into that? And I know, Wes, you've done some of that too, and you, obviously all of you all have. What does it take to compose a jazz song that really kind of works for you and everybody else?
You asking me?
I'm asking everybody, because you're all composers here.
You know, be quite honest. I'm telling you, honestly, honest goodness truth to me. I don't write music like that. I don't write a jazz song. I write music, and depending upon the flavor or the color that I'd like it to be, that's what it becomes. See, because I'll put it to you this way. When you listen to Miles Davis play Someday My Prince Will Come, there are people that hear that never heard the original, that say, oh, well, that's a great jazz song. And it wasn't no jazz song, but it's just the way Miles Davis played it that made it what it is. It was something before, and the way he played it and what attitude he put on it made it something different. So I just try to write music, and whatever slot it falls in depends upon who plays it.
Wes, what about you? I know you're a composer and you've done a lot of pieces as well. What is your process?
You know, for me, I just like to sit down on my roads and tinker away. You know, it's just kind of what Lenny was saying. If we're writing art music, right? I think that's what needs to be talked about with jazz, is that it's its own encapsulated thing, the heart of the music. That's what it is. And my songs, I always try and come to tune from an artful place, you know. And I have to, going into that, I think this is what we were all talking about, going into that. Okay, this song not going to be heard by 6 billion people. You know what I mean? Like, because this is just your personal art music, and you have to approach it that way. And I know Miles and all the jazz heroes that we listen to daily. I know that's how they came at it. And so there's no I'm not sure it's how do you write a jazz song. I think it's more why do you write a jazz song, you know? And I think you see that going back to what Malick was saying earlier with, you know, dissemination of information, and what we were talking about with get things like jazz music now to the average. I don't want to talk down to the average American, but a lot of people I speak with about this, they love postmodern jukebox, and to me that's way off the mark. You know, I don't know if y'all are familiar with that, but
what did you say? What was it? Say it again.
Postmodern jukebox, and that's, you know, that's an instance of someone trying to write jazz music, taking modern songs and making it jazzy, and they're just figuring out the how. Like, well, if I kind of do some of these, you know, swing beat sort of to a Taylor Swift song, maybe that turns it into a jazz. But that's only dealing with the how, whereas why are we doing this? I think that's a much more important question. So that's what I try and do when I write tunes. Why do I want to pursue this melody that's in my head right now versus this other melody that, I don't know, maybe I was thinking about it for a week or two and now it's gone. You know what I mean? Why is more important than how.
Tanya, I've heard some of Emilio's compositions. Actually, when he was one of my students in my ensemble, he wrote a couple of compositions that we did with the ensemble in school, and brilliant compositions. And I know he plays me some stuff that like had some great beats on it. Somebody could have rhymed on it too. So again, the fact is that these gentlemen here are 21st century musicians, And when I came up in the latter part of the 20th century, there was so many different kinds of musics that I could have listened to shape whatever music it is that I wound up playing. They have that same opportunity too. So I don't think that you would say, I want to write a jazz song, or I want to write a hip hop beat, or I want to write a classical song. Now, if I was asked to do a percussion ensemble piece, that's what I'm asked to do. If I was commissioned to write a classical piece for orchestra, that's what I would have to do. I'm commissioned to do that. But again, so what was so what? Impressions is impressions. Giant steps was giant steps. And they happen to be in the quote unquote jazz tradition, so they became jazz songs. But if Michael Jackson was to write some lyrics to Giant Steps and sing it, then what would that be?
Yeah.
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 And I wanted to interject here because a couple of weeks ago, we actually had quite an interesting conversation on one of those Zoom calls that we had as a group. And Mr. Ron Carter had said something about language. And if we go according to Lenny's philosophy, which is rooted in the legacy of this music, jazz, or I guess the more artistic and musical part of it, is tied to a certain language. Now, for us to be having this conversation, there's a common ground. There's a common agreement as to how we formulate sentences and deliver them to be heard. Now, with that has nothing to do with style, because right now we're talking about a specific topic. And I feel that genre today, in today's music, is given a little too much stature, in the sense that, you know, because when we discuss this stuff, we're talking about topics. They're topics of discussion, but we still use the same ABCs to formulate our sentences and whatnot. So when it comes time to write music, there's a common language that exists that we all understand, which is why as humans, we appreciate music. And then within that goes more specification as to what it is that you want to do. But the label of genre, you know, is given a little too much stature, in the sense that, you know, so when, you know, I'm discussing music with somebody or trying to get to a product that is, you know, musical, there's no like, oh, we're going to write a rock tune, or we're going to write it's more so we have these ABCs and we're trying to make a sentence that is coherent, that everybody can agree upon. And then once it's delivered, because again of the powers that be, it may be labeled as whatever it may be labeled for people to be able to receive that information comfortably.
Exactly.
There you go.
Well said.
There
Malick.
you go, Malick. Hey, Tanya, we write music and we compose music and we play music because it's music, but we don't like to. I personally don't like to be categorized. When I compose or when I play music, I play with the vision, or I compose with the vision of people. What would it would sound like on an ensemble? What would it sound like if Lenny and I did double drums, or Malick and I did double drums, or if Emilio played with us? And then I could see it on stage. I could see it being performed. You know, I'm thinking that far. You know what I mean? Not for somebody to say, "Oh, this is jazz," or this is. You know, don't put a label on my music. It's music. Uncle Mouse used to call it social music. He didn't like the word jazz, you know? And he didn't set out to write and record Kinda Blue and say it was going to be the biggest jazz record of all time. It was the music that he wanted to record at that time in his life. You know?
I think, Tanya, the fact that one of the reasons why a lot of great composers of this genre didn't want to call it jazz is because of the connotations of what that word meant. And it would only be a myopic way of looking at what their compositions were.
Yes.
So, I mean, when you hear Sonny Rollins do Reverie, that's a classical piece of music.
Mm-hmm.
And he put a thing on it. When you hear Sonny Rollins do I'm an Old Cowhand, that's Broadway music. But when Sonny Rollins plays it, I guess it's jazz now. You know what I mean?
Right, right,
Yeah.
right,
Right?
right.
I
Right.
know. Well, I gotta say, I don't want to keep, you guys have been so wonderful. And Emilio, I have heard a lot of your pieces, and you are just unbelievably awesome, young man. I just have to tell you.
He's okay.
You're more than okay. Don't listen to him, okay? Listen to me. I'm the audience, okay? I count. I'm the audience.
No, for real. I mean, that's real. This is who I put my trust of how my music is going to continue to live in.
Yes.
So
I want
Yeah.
to say something real quick. We did the documentary Birth of the Cool, right? We screened it in Soweto.
Fabulous.
In Soweto.
Fabulous.
And dig this, Malick, and everybody, the brothers here. The brothers that saw the documentary after it was screened and screened in Soweto, and we had a Q&A, like a meet and greet Q&A kind of thing. Do you know the brothers were crying because of what they saw in this documentary? You know, and that's touched my heart so much. You know, I'm in South Africa, and these brothers are crying because of the music that they saw on the screen. You know, and we got to continue to not get labeled and just play music and get out there after this thing is over and get back on the, you know.
Right. That's my
Right, you
right.
know?
That's my next question, because it seems right now that even though we're in this horrible situation, because it is horrible, let's just be real, there are always opportunities, you know?
Mhm.
There are always opportunities. And I'd like to hear from each of you before I let you go what you're working on, because we want to promote everybody's stuff. So 2 questions. And we'll start, because on my screen, I see you, Vince, first. So tell us, I know you and Lenny are working on an album that you're getting out there, but tell us what you're working on. And if you were going to play another instrument, what would it be?
We're working on the Miles Electric Band record on Legacy, Sony Legacy. And I would like to play with everybody on this screen. And I would, if I could, I would want to play bass. I'm a bass player, a closet bass player, but
Okay.
I love the bass, you know. But and we're just pushing the envelope, evolving. That's what Uncle Miles taught me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody on this screen, I want to, you know, I've either played with them or I want to play with them.
Lenny?
well, I've gotten a couple of opportunities now to get, I don't know about this semester, but maybe by next semester, things change a little bit, to get some of my orchestral pieces performed. The orchestra at NYU has decided that they're going to, I guess because of Black Lives Matter, they're going to have some black composers do, they're going to do some of the music of black composers. And so like they're going to have some of my music performed. And, you know, I have a couple of projects, you know, as the Miles Davis Electric Band, and a couple of projects that I'm working on to get out. And when I learn how to play the drums, then I'll try to get another instrument too. So.
Yeah,
No,
whatever.
she said if you wanted to play another instrument, Len.
Right. Well,
I don't.
So that's the point. How about you, Emilio?
What was the question?
Well, yeah, I know it's been a long time. The question was, what are you working on during this downtime of the pandemic? And if you were going to play another instrument, what would it be?
He plays all those other instruments anyway. It don't matter to him.
That's true.
What am I working on? I'm working on getting up out and standing up, you know. We sit here
He's got some great music that he's working on. I've heard it. He's got some great music.
Incredible music.
Well, that's what I said earlier. I've listened to the stuff that he, one of your last performances, I would imagine, was with Wallace. Was that the one in France in November?
France. Yes, that was our last European tour.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I had a chance to listen to that concert. That's what I said, honey. You're awesome. You just
Emilio, you have a composition on the record, right? On Wallace's record?
Yes, I have two. One called Venus Rising and another called Elliptical. And that came out in
all right. So, and these are all available. I want people to know this too, but we'll get to that in just a minute. I want to get to Wes and also to Malick. So, Wes, what are you working on? And if you could play another instrument, what would it be?
I just finished tracking some drums yesterday with a good friend in the studio here. My goal, things change a little bit when you have children, but my goal was to have my third album out last summer. So, here we are trying to finish it still, but it'll get done. And this is a different conversation now, but I've taken most of my music down, and with the COVID stuff, CD baby, kind of, some of the digital distributors have sort of left the artists hanging. So maybe this is a conversation for another Zoom call or something like that, but I'm figuring out what the best option is to, like we were talking about earlier, make this incredible music available to people in a accessible way. You know what I mean? So I'm plotting my moves, and then if I had to change instruments, boy, I think the cool thing about being a woodwind guy is 3 days ago, I was tracking clarinet for a little film cue, and I'll be doing that later today, and tomorrow maybe be some flute and, some saxophone here and there. So I think the woodwinds is a nice family. I think I'll stay.
Sounds good. What about you, Malick?
Just taking a lot of time to, reflect on what it is, that it was to be in part of Wallace Roney's band, and ultimately find a way to, have a tighter grip onto what it is to have a relationship with my elders and my peers musically, so that bridge that Lenny was talking about, in order to make that bridge a little more seamless. So I've been congregating quite a lot with some cohorts in the works to find opportunities for us, amidst all of this. And as far
I hope it's online and not together, right? No.
Yes. Yes. By any means necessary. But as far as another instrument, I'd say that the trumpet just does something that the trumpet is amazing.
Wow.
Trumpet is amazing.
Well, I'm really hoping that we will be back to something. Oh, let me tell about myself, just so we're ending this. So my instrument has always been my voice, but my parents did spend a lot of money on piano lessons, and if I could really go back and revisit that, I should probably do that. That's what I've been thinking that I should be doing during this time. But speaking of the woodwinds too, you know what I've always really loved? I've always loved the oboe. I played clarinet when I was in high school, but my best friend was first chair oboe player, and I just thought that was the coolest instrument. So I just had anyway, I really hope that we can get back to concerts and seeing you guys again. Some people are doing these concerts now where they're having people, it's like coming to a drive-in, and you get a space, and they're in their cars, and then they've got a little stage, and everybody is social distancing on stage. And I was thinking, that's not a bad idea. That really isn't. Think about that.
Summer stage drive-in.
Yeah. I mean, really, because everybody's got the protocol. People are with their own folks, because they're in their cars, You have a good sound system, so maybe we should all think about that one.
I don't know. You know, I gotta be with people. I have to play with people and play in front of people so that I can get that energy back from those people. And, you know, so I got to find a way to do that. That's the best way I can say it.
That's the best way you can say it. Well, they do have some hazmat suits that we could all get to. That might be the only.
No,
you know,
we got to find us a bubble, and we got to play in the bubble. We got to play in the bubble.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, that's what the basketball players are doing.
That's exactly right.
And it's working. It's actually working for them. It's not working for baseball.
No, that you heard what happened today.
Yeah. Ooh. Not happening for baseball because they're not in a bubble. That's what I'm serious. I mean, because I miss my summer concerts. Come on now, y'all. So maybe
I miss them too.
Yeah, I know you do.
You do too. Yeah. we miss playing them.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe we can find a bubble. Let's think about that. We come up with that one. That's a good little marketing tool. I just want to thank all of you so much.
Bud's bubble.
Yeah. I want to thank all of you so much for your contribution to this great American music, your contribution to humankind. We're going to continue this. We're going to make sure that we have everybody's website up too, if there's stuff that you want people to hear when we do post this and play it on the air. So thank you all so much. Is there any parting words that you'd like to have? You know, it's your forum.
I just want to say, Tanya, thanks. You know,
thank you, Tanya.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. It means a lot. It means a lot. You know.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. And American Urban Radio Networks, by the way, has been around playing Black music for